It's hard to intro a video like this. Uh, Little Dicky dropped his sophomore album, technically, loosely a soundtrack titled Penith. And we're just going to talk about it because I bit the bullet and I decided, you know what? If no one else is going to listen, I will. And I know a lot of people have listened to it, but I feel like the numbers, if you haven't listened to it, consider this as that I listened to Little Dicky and I listened to the album Penith, so you don't have to. And I'm trying not to put Little Dicky and Penith together because that's just, I'm not giving him that joke. So I don't know how this is happening. It's Hip Hop DX that gave this review and gave this album a 66. I don't know how you listen to this record and you get close to a 7 out of 10. If you were to round up, it would be like a 7 out of 10. I don't know how that's possible. But what makes it even more funnier is that the user score is an 8. That is the lowest album I have ever seen scrolling through the site. I've just started doing that very recently, but that is the very lowest that I have ever seen it. Now, even just a few days ago, it was at like an 11. So even then, it was still bad. I would not be surprised if we look at this album towards the end of the year and it goes down to as low as like a 5. And this album deserves it. This album is absolutely atrocious. First week sales are non existent. And I kind of expected that because with Lil Dicky, rap is not the number one vehicle. It's definitely television. It's definitely entertainment industry. And I feel like the music side of it is just more of kind of a complementary piece to all of the stuff that he's doing on the FX show. Dave, I haven't watched it. I heard it's okay. After listening to this album, I don't know if I want to check it out anymore. But I wanted to go down the previous releases before we get to the mess that is all of this. So, his debut album was Professional Rapper, which had a critic score of a 53. So, I don't know how in the hell that someone thinks that Penith is better than Professional Rapper, and I do not like Professional Rapper. But what I can at least say is that Professional Rapper has at least a couple of good songs on it. The user score is a 23, so it is a lot more respectable. 23 is a very fair rating for this kind of record. And the first week sales are 22,000. I think this debuted at number 1. Maybe on the rap chart. Definitely I'm not sure if it debuted on the Billboard 200, but 22K. Honestly, everyone was selling records at this time. I think this came out in 2015. This was before there was a whole bunch of rules and restrictions with album releases and first week sales. So everyone and anyone was selling copies at this point. And then we get to the singles. So the reason why I do this is that Lil Dicky does not drop much, but when he does, oh boy, it's bad. Freaky Friday. This is all from album of the year, by the way. Uh, User score of a 9. A gimmick song if I've ever heard it. You hear it once, and that's all you need to know. It's a weird dynamic between Chris Brown and Lil Dicky. It gives off this awkward energy. It's just an awful track. What's worse though is Earth, which is out of 5. Literally, the only merit that this track has is that you have celebrity cameos where all of them are terrible and all of them phone it in for a check. This song is terrible. The message behind it sure could be cool, but this is one of the worst charity singles and one of the worst songs possibly ever created. And I am not exaggerating. And I put Save That Money on here because it's weird to say, but this is probably Lil Dicky's magnum opus of a track. And I don't even know if I would give it a 60. I feel like I would probably give it still like a 40. Pretty much the only contributing factor to this song being good is the music video at the time was pretty creative, trying to find the cheapest way possible to make a music video. And then he also had Prime Fetty Wap, which brought the catchiest hook that you could imagine. Everything basically with this song is all contributed to Fetty Wap, and then the TV side of it, the music side of it kind of goes to the wayside. It's more of like the film and entertainment aspect. And that's exactly what happens with Penith. Now, there's quite a bit of music videos that drop with this album, and once we get to the tracks, I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm just going to go by score, but I will mention some notable moments on this album that just irk me. So, brand new to 24, there's really nothing to it. It's one of the intros of all time. It's just kind of has a couple of vocal lines, vocal melodies. It's the most intro song you can think of, and it's the highest rated. There's literally nothing going on for it. Honestly, this is going to be a big problem, is that there's really nothing to talk about. Little Dicky, whenever he tries to get introspective, it always offsets it with a terrible joke. And it's always clashing against each other to the point where you don't know if he wants to get serious or he just wants to make comedic jabs every 5 seconds. Mr. McAdams, another kind of the same thing. It sounds like the most poppiest and most kind of appealing song on this album. It would be the one that you would push, like a single push the most. And then you get to Ha Ha Ha, which I will admit the music video is pretty cool. But once you take the music video away, this song and this contributes to one of the biggest problems. And I'm surprised no one's talking about this. The production on this album is so minimal, it's basically non-existent. There is literally no kind of interesting moments across this album besides maybe one or two tracks. But even then, that's just like starter kind of production. This is one of the most minimal sounding albums I have heard for the worst way possible. And it kind of, I don't know why this is, but I decided to look at the Dave playlist, which kind of has songs that inspire the TV show. There's a lot of Baby Keem on there. And once you listen to this album, you hear Baby Keem production type beats all across this album. It's minimal, the bass is heavy, it's kind of distorted. That's exactly there's like 4 or 5 songs on this album that sound exactly like a Baby Keem type beat. Ali song, another one of those lovey-dovey cuts. Harrison Ave is probably the one that gives the most merit. Actually has a story behind it. I guess Lil Dicky finding a girl kind of, I guess around, I think it was 4th grade, kind of chronicling the back and forth kind of complicated relationship between friendship then going into a dating relationship and then going out of it. All the kind of the hallmarks basically of like a romantic comedy kind of thing. It's cute, I guess. And the production's probably the best part of it, but every time that Little Dicky gets into a nice pocket, or he's getting introspective, or he's actually captivating your attention, he decides to go on a tangent about going on a table and waving a napkin because that's part of like a restaurant tradition, or kind of saying some other stuff where it just goes on an aside, like it doesn't even become rap at this point, and then it just kind of throws everything off the track. You get back on the track, you get thrown off. You get back on the track, you get thrown off. The song can work, but it is a mess because Little Dicky is so focused on trying to be funny. But just play it straight. If you're gonna go full comedy, just do it. But if you're going to bring the introspection and bring the personal stories, you have to pick one, or you have to be a better writer. That's as simple as it is. And then you get Burst, Second Coming, very funny. Second Coming has a vocal interlude, pretty much a vocal intro saying that Little Dicky is Kanye West, but the only difference is that he's white. That's the joke, and then it goes into a Yeezus type beat. Little Dicky raps on it. It's okay. It's very forgettable, but that beginning line sets this track up for absolute failure. I Love Myself is another boring one. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, if you look at these numbers, so 24, 28, 11, 11, 12, Harrison Ave at 25, one of the higher points, 14, 14, 15, and then we get to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at a 6. One of the worst hooks on this entire album. It sounds so kiddish, it sounds so juvenile, and it's a disaster. Going Gray at a 14. This is Lil Dicky's attempt to say that he's sad, and it's very boring because of it. I Met a Girl, the title says it by itself, at a 12. And then we get to the YG interlude, the only feature on this album, but all he's saying is that just throw on a beat. Let's just make a beat from here. Little Dicky brings up a line about Magic Johnson. I believe it's Magic Johnson avoiding mosquitoes, and it's one of the worst bars on this entire album. And then we reach Hell. No fruits or vegetables. If you want to talk about juvenile, incredibly juvenile. The Baby Keem type beats are back. I believe the chorus is, I don't eat fruits or vegetables, I eat the pussy, and all kinds of other stuff. Kind of around those lines. That kind of gives you an idea of what you're getting into here. One of the worst beats, one of the worst performances across this entire album. And it's at a number 3. 3 out of 100, by the way. This isn't like 3 out of 10. This is 3 out of 100. And then you get to I'm Drunk. The funnies, because he's singing because he's pretending that he's drunk or whatever. The beat's terrible too. But the vocal performance is so bad. And it's not a funny bad. It's just one of those things where you kind of, I don't know when you kind of listen to a really bad song and you just kind of just sit there with mouth agape and it's just like, what is this? And how is this being released? And then you get Morning After. The content of Morning After is terrible. It's kind of like this rap slow jam, but the joke is that Lil Dicky says bussy on it. The condom gets stuck there, apparently. And then basically Lil Dicky's like, oh my goodness, we just had sex, no condom kind of thing. But then the girl comes back and is like, I'll just get the morning after pill afterwards. And then Lil Dicky tries to bring it back around to make it like this introspective piece. And it's just like, but you know, that's what young love is, or kind of whatever the topic is. But he's just like, you know what? That's just life. No, it's not. So, 3, 4, 4. And then it gets to My Dick Sucks, which is another 4 out of 100. The hook is simply the title. Yep. And we get to the final song, which is, well, not technically the final song, but it's the final song on the actual base album. Still freestyle and outro. It's at an 11. It's such a whimper of an outro. And if I'm not mistaken, the way that the last line that Lil Dicky has on the base version of this album is that, why did they send out the lobsters before you cook them? So you can look into their eyes. So that's Lil Dicky's penith. I did it. I put the two words together. He got me with that one. So that's the base album. But then you get to the bonus tracks, which there's not really a lot to say about it. We Good is just basically a song about his friend, which is novel, I'll say that much. High on Dave is just the intro to the TV show. And Hearsay, honestly, is quite overhated at a 12. It's the best track on here. Reason why is that it's 1 minute and 40 seconds long. There is very little comedy on it. The beat is minimal, but it works. And actually, Lil Dicky provides a very varied, brings a versatile vocal and rap performance that goes in different flows and different pockets. Hearsay is the best song on this album. But then you get the Jail Part 1. This is 9 minutes long of chronicling so many very questionable lines, very questionable story, very questionable antics about, at the very beginning, Lil Dicky basically saying is just like, had a great show, let's just top it off by exposing myself to an all ages show. But instead of not doing that, it's like, I'll expose the nuts. Uh, gets Goes to jail, and then he meets his jailmate, and he's just like, do I associate with the blacks or associate with the Spanish and Mexicans? It's it makes you so uncomfortable. Then they play basketball. Apparently, it's really good. Then he like upsets one of them, and then he then just like, oh, like instead of getting the R word in prison, maybe I'll just give willing head. And it that does happen, and it goes in very grave detail, and it gets to the point where he bites the person's thing off, and that's the song. You don't have to listen to it. I just chronicled it for you. I have PTSD now. Had a 6 out of 100, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned it. So that's Little Dicky with his album Penith. And the reason why I wanted to review this is because this possibly is one of the worst albums I have ever heard in my life. It is boring. It is unimaginative. It is disgusting. It is offensive to both as a music listener and even just as a person in general. It is unfunny. It is cringe-inducing. There are so many words that I can think of. And I think an 8 out of 100 is giving it too much credit. This is, again, one of the worst albums I have ever heard in my entire life. And I've been listening to music for a good long time now, and I've listened to a lot of terrible albums. And usually I like to laugh at really bad albums. I can't with this one. I can't even ironically laugh or unironically laugh at how bad it is, because it is just blatantly offensive. But hey, we have the Lyrical Lemonade album that just dropped, so go listen to that instead. It's really good. I'll probably wait for a couple of days to get some numbers, but really good album on that one. But I listened to the Lil Dicky album, so you don't have to.